Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethlie.
And we are the Youngs.
We're so glad you've joined us as we continue in this series, which really has become quite the series, on parenting special needs children.
Yes, it has. And of course, the summer's rolling right along here, and we don't want to spend the whole summer on this topic because we have several other topics we want to discuss.
Right.
But we do have a few more, at least a couple more podcasts here in this series.
More episodes.
And so we'll be moving those along here today and probably next week, and hopefully after that maybe come to an end. And so we are working on all of that diligently. But thanks for joining us, and we hope you've enjoyed this series and it's been a help to you. It is a lot of parents in our generation are raising special needs children. And maybe you're listening and your children would not fit that category, but there's always lessons to learn from the principles of God's Word.
Right.
And so thanks for staying with us here and listening to this. If you know someone that would benefit from these, we would encourage you to share it. And certainly we always hope you'll like and subscribe and even leave us a rating on the podcast that allow you to do so. That's always a help to us as well about getting our information and our material and all that out there. But we are so happy to hear from you along the way. We had a question that was asked this week that I'm actually putting together our next series in relation to that question. And we've got, we have people reach out to us frequently. Just sometimes they'll call us, text us, Instagram, Facebook. Any way we can reach out to you and be a blessing to you, let us know, and we'd be happy to do it. But any thoughts from you before we jump in today?
Well, I feel rather certain that people will be reaching out to us about this topic that we're about to embark on for the next couple of episodes, just because people feel very strongly about it.
Yes, and we'll just jump in and tell you, we're going to talk about the issue of medication, because one of the things about special needs is that it is varied. If your child is blind, that's a special needs child, but that is different than your special needs child that is dealing with OCD or ADHD or ADD or any number of those kind of things. So there are mental health issues that are considered special needs, and there's also behavioral issues now that are considered special needs. So one of the questions that comes up anytime we talk about special case scenarios, even if it's not special needs, is the issue of medication.
Right.
And because we've received so many questions and so many comments, we thought we would do just a couple of episodes on the issue of medication. Now, we'll tell you right up front that in the first place, we are well aware that there are multiple views on this issue.
Yes.
There are many people we know who believe that it's just absolutely wrong. Never use it. If you use it, you're a failure as a parent.
Right.
And then we have others who believe if you don't use it, you're a failure as a parent. Mm-hmm. And we may be somewhere in the middle, though we would probably lean towards less of the medication is better. So we'll just give you that right up front. Mm-hmm. And we never used it. I know that even for Bethlie, there were at least several times in our travels when Bethlie had some health issues. And to treat a health issue, one of the doctors suggested she go on some kind of antidepressant.
Right. It was a digestive issue. And they were like, oh, well, we have medication for that. And so David and I started researching, and it was antidepressant medicine. And so I decided to not take that for my tummy.
And that wasn't that we were against the antidepressant medicine necessarily, but our research on it showed the side effects and the percentage of those who had certain side effects. We decided that taking that medication would provide more problems than it would solve for us.
Right.
So we'll be talking about that later, about the importance of examining every medication you take, because we are supposed to be wise stewards of what God's given to us.
Yes.
And our bodies are one of those things we're supposed to steward. It belongs to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so as we get started, we're going to talk about the issue of medication, and let's just jump right in. You ready?
Okay.
So I did a lot of research. We found all kinds of random things about research, and just in typing in different things. Now, let me just read you some of the stuff we found. Regarding ADHD, for instance, Pelham, I think is how you pronounce that,
yes,
was a treatment pioneer and found, this is what they said, that behavioral therapy, when used first, is less expensive. Well, to me, that was kind of funny. Well, no kidding, because training a child costs nothing, whereas medication does.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of a funny one. They did a lot of research to find out that it's less expensive not to use it, but it is more effective in treating children with ADHD than is medication. Stimulants are most effective as a supplemental second-line treatment option for those who need it, and at lower doses than typically are prescribed. So that was just from a website that I looked up, had to deal with these kind of things. And here's another way of saying it, another quote. Our research has found time and time again that behavioral intervention is best for children with ADHD because they, their teachers, and their parents learn skills and strategies that will help them succeed at home, at school, and in relationships long term. Medicating our children doesn't solve the problem. It only takes away the symptoms temporarily. Instead, families should focus on behavioral interventions first and add medication only if needed. End of quote. And so then I typed in the question again, just is it better? Well, that was the question. Is it better to treat ADHD without medication? And we had another website that said therapy on its own is shown to be highly effective at treating ADHD. And the discussion was training versus meds.
Right.
The Cleveland Clinic. Read what they said in the article we read.
They said studies have shown that approximately 80% of children with ADHD have fewer symptoms after finding the correct stimulant medication and dosage. Stimulants are considered a controlled substance, which means they have the potential to be improperly used and cause substance use disorder.
And then they went on to say, among the more common mental health conditions that can be diagnosed in childhood are anxiety disorders, that involves things like fears or worries, depressive disorders, and behavioral disorders. Healthcare and mental health professionals use the guidelines in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual to help. And then I found this was very interesting from the CDC. The quality of the relationships and environments where children and adolescents grow up shapes their well-being and development. And then they gave these bullet points. The first one:
safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments provide a strong foundation for children's mental and physical health and opportunity to grow and thrive.
And I think that's worth our pausing on. Whatever condition your child has that would be considered special need, whether your child is a highly functioning autistic child or a nonverbal, perhaps you're dealing with a child that has very, very difficult physical issues. One of the things we found over and over again in our research was that the greater the safer, the more stable, the more nurturing the relationships in that kid's life, and the better its environment, the better chances that child has to do well.
Right.
That medication alone will not help unless there is a safe, stable, nurturing relationships involved and a really good environment.
Yes.
And I thought that was very worth our pointing out. Early adverse experiences in homes, schools, or digital spaces increase the risk of mental health problems. This includes experiencing or witnessing violence, which is interesting there. That can be violence literally in a home where there's fighting, where there's anger, where there's abuse. But it can also be violence where it is in a video game, right, or in the movies that our little ones watch. So this includes experiencing or witnessing violence, living with a parent or other caregiver who has a substance use or mental health condition, and not having sufficient or stable housing or food. So one of the things I thought was very interesting as we began studying this idea of medication was that every website, if you research it, seems to point to the fact that there are alternatives to medicine. And that even if you're going to use medicine, it has to be balanced with good training, with good diet, with good relationships, with a stable, successful home. And it just goes back, the reason I point all that out, friends, is because Bethlie and I, as we discuss this issue, really do believe that your home is one of the most important gifts God gives to you.
Yes.
And winning at home is an absolute must if our children are going to be well in life. And we just listened to Renee Gamble here a few weeks ago talk about raising her twins. And there is no doubt that Michael is the successful autistic adult that he is because of the home they had.
Right.
The training, the peace, the joy, the victory, the way they parented, the way they trained, the way they emphasized. So moms and dads, it is imperative that you work on your family when you have a special needs child. It is essential. And so as we jump in here, talking about the issue of medication, let's give some points and get this started. All right, you ready?
Yes, and we would say that most medicines that we are going to address, we're not going to use any specific medication or prescription, but they would be prescribed for behavioral health and mental health. these would not be necessarily prescribed for a child who is, say, severely autistic or a child who has a physical
Or
difficulty.
battling seizures, things
Right.
of that sort
Yes.
that have a physical
Things that
element.
your child needs to stay alive, that
Yes.
is totally different.
So here we go. First of all, we would begin by just simply pointing out that meds are here to stay.
Yes.
Let's just start there. There is no doubt about it that our society is a medicine society.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing, because most everybody we know uses meds in some way.
Right.
I was thinking about, some of them are pharmaceutical. And not all medicine is pharmaceutical, because some meds are natural.
Right.
And we, because of our travels and being associated with the homeschool world and the church world, sometimes in the church or in the homeschool world, there are a lot of the natural emphasis.
Right.
And then when you're online, once you kind of get connected to that, all the algorithms of the internet bring in some of the, all of a sudden everything starts dropping into your inbox, advertisements that have to do, and sometimes they're just downright spooky. Sometimes, to take this weed and this weed will do this in your life, or, eat this or put this in your coffee.
Do you mean like
Not CBD.
CBD?
I mean, like some,
that kind of weed?
No. Like some plant.
Oh, like something that just grows in your yard.
Yes, take this dandelion and it will do this in your life.
Right.
And I remember reading somewhere along the way of, the 15 or 25 or 35 uses for the dandelion that will cure this and cure that and heal this and heal that. And you know what? The fact of the matter is, I remember our pediatrician when our kids were younger, because we had asked him about some of those things. Mm-hmm. And he did say that medicine is one of the most amazing things, because medicine sometimes can be a mental, can affect our mental condition itself. Just the fact of taking, not the medicine, but the fact that we're believing it works.
Right.
And that can have a really positive effect on our life. If we're taking it and we believe this is going to change this, then typically our mind agrees with us and changes it. Mm-hmm. And it really is amazing how God made us in that way.
Well, and I do believe, we tend to try to find alternative methods. Like if we go to the doctor and they say your cholesterol is a little high, or your blood pressure is a little high, or your sugar is a little high, we will tend to be like, you know what, let's see if we can fix that by diet or exercise, instead of saying, oh, well, prescribe me something. So we do tend to try to find alternative methods. I don't know that we are totally holistic.
No.
We do go to a doctor. We will take Tylenol if we have a headache. We do try to, first of all, we're like, have I had water today? Which, of course, I have had water. I drink water all day long.
Dear friends, she's depleting the water level of the country.
That's not true. But anyway, so we're not saying that it's absolutely wrong. If you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, your blood pressure is off the chart, let's see if we can get that down a little bit. And yes, change your diet, exercise, whatever.
Sure.
But at the same time, there are natural methods that I do believe work. I don't think you just have to think in your head that they work.
Well, that may be true. So the point here, is that medicine is here to stay. And all of us do. But most people would take Tylenol, or if needed, blood pressure medication. We take antibiotics when they're needed.
Yes.
And even the issue of vaccines fall in the realm of medication. And that too is kind of a debated topic in our generation.
It is.
But, rarely, there are many people, I guess, that refuse to take any vaccines at all. And we are not of that. We evaluate each vaccine individually as, how has it been historically? Has it made a difference historically? Is it something that we need? Is it a life-threatening matter versus, well, you'll just get sick and this can keep you from getting sick. Mm-hmm. When for me, I don't remember polio when we were kids was a really big deal, taking the polio vaccine, because our parents would have known someone whose life was damaged greatly because they got polio.
Right.
And measles and mumps and rubella and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Because our fathers, my parents and my grandparents, your parents and grandparents would have been affected by that.
Yes.
Their childhood would have been affected by that.
Yes.
So that led almost everyone in our generation to take those, and it did make a difference as far as it did clear that up.
Yes.
And for me, we're not opposed to medication or vaccines. For me, I flew somewhere, I can't remember what country I was going to, and the requirement to get a visa into that country was that you had to have a vaccine for yellow fever. Mm-hmm. And of course, I took the vaccine. I did research on it to make sure, I'm taking the right one. Is this exactly what I need to do? But in order for me to go minister in that country, I had to have that vaccine. I did the research. I saw nothing wrong with taking the vaccine. And so we ended up taking that, and it allowed me into the country, and people were saved, and we were able to serve the Lord.
Right.
And I had the chicken pox. Remember that? Right after we got married, our doctor...
Chicken pox vaccine.
The chicken pox vaccine. Because our doctor was asking us questions, and he was one of those, back in the day, when you go to the family doctor, and he did everything.
Right.
And he'd sit and talk to you, and he knew your parents and knew everything about you. And so we had a doctor like that in Ohio when I moved up there, and he was the one that said, according to your chart, you've never had chicken pox. And I just never had. I remember being in Sunday school when I think it was in either kindergarten or the first grade, and every kid in my class had chicken pox, but I never got it. And so and he even said, well, maybe you have a natural antibody to it, but sometimes adults do get it because they didn't get it in their childhood, and it is brutal when you're an adult. And he said, so you ought to research this vaccine and take the chickenpox vaccine. All it does is it does the same thing as if you had chickenpox. Mm-hmm. And so we researched it and thought that's a good idea. And so I took the chickenpox vaccine.
Right.
So meds are not a bad thing necessarily.
They're not.
Meds are here to stay.
They are. Right. And honestly, you pray about the vaccines that you take. We just research them. We take the ones that we feel that our children needed. If we feel like it is absolutely not needed because pharmacy is just coming out with new ones all the time and we can just get a cold and move on, we're good.
Absolutely. So now we have a second point here. First of all, medicine is here to stay.
It is.
Okay. Then here's the second point. All right, go ahead.
Do everything possible not to use them. Instead, focus on older, proven methods that have worked for centuries. Now, here we're talking again about meds that would be prescribed for behavioral health or mental health.
Yes. And notice we're not saying don't use them. We're just saying do everything possible not to use them.
Right.
In other words, don't use them as a first resource. Mm-hmm. There are older methods that have worked for centuries that you should at least try. And think of 3 different areas here. Beth and I broke it down into home and family, and then personal, and then with children. And maybe the home and family is kind of the same thing there. But follow what we're thinking here. When it comes to your home and family, start by determining to have a strong family.
Right.
Make sure that your home is a place of great love, great gentleness, great peace. Be wise about what you let your kids watch on television. Mm-hmm. Be careful about their video games. And everybody who researches it agrees that social media always has a negative impact on the hearts and mental health of our children.
Yes.
And if that's true, then we especially as Christians, and we're speaking primarily to a Christian audience, listen, if you know the Lord and the world we live in is concerned, if people who don't believe the Bible, don't believe in Christianity, don't believe in truth are concerned about social media, certainly we should be.
Absolutely.
And because that will affect our children's mental health and it will affect often their behavior. And so determined to have a strong family. Start right there. Mm-hmm. Love has to be said and shown. Be very loving in your family. And if you weren't raised that way, then get around someone and say, how do you do it? How do you show love in your family?
Right.
And how do you say it? And then have a conversation. Sit everybody down and say, we're going to work at saying love. And then practice it. And if nobody else in your family does, you can still say it to your family. And just make that a very important matter. Determined to have a strong family. And in light of that, I would say work to have a peaceful home.
We live in such a busy society. And we go. And I would say that most of us who are Christians don't want an unpeaceful home. We don't think that, let's just have home be like a war zone or home be uncomfortable or home be awkward or whatever. I think we just get so busy, and therefore moms and dads, husbands and wives are not working on their relationship. They get strident in the way they talk to each other. Everything becomes clipped. Everything becomes rushed. Family dinners are no longer a thing. We're just throwing something together or throwing fast food in the backseat. And there are days that happen like that. I'm not shaming anyone who has days that happen like that. We have days that happen like that where we just have to run all day. But I think probably our busyness does compound our children's ability to function.
There's no doubt.
Yes. I think even Charity, who is in a very stable home, who is well loved, who we do work at very much at having a peaceful home in the way we talk to each other and the way we love on each other, all of that stuff. But I can tell when we've been a little bit busy because I'll say, okay, I'm running too. And she'll say, oh, where are you going now? There's just, even as a 16-year-old, she has to assimilate that. Her heart has to be at peace with that. And I know that's my clue. Oh, I need to spend time with Charity. We need to have a family evening. We mostly have dinner together. But I think we're just so busy. And then we wonder, why is my child acting out? Or why is my child withdrawing? Or why is my child all of a sudden not eating well? Or, you plug in whatever is happening with your child. It could be that we just live such a busy lifestyle and we need to pull it back a little, and we need to understand how that busy lifestyle is actually stressing us out, and that is coming out. Even though we would say, well, I would never take that out on my kids. I would never take my stress out on my kids. It does. It comes out in harsh tones, clipped language, maybe even harsh words and all of that. Would you just hurry up? Would you just hurry up? We have a child who we would say that to. And I know, I look back and I know it frustrated the life out of him because he's not a hurrier. And he would just get so, it would just stop him in his tracks. And then there was no hurry whatsoever. And so we just had to learn, okay, we're going to take our time with this child. So I would say, first of all, a peaceful home is probably one where you're not so much in a rush all the time.
Yeah, and think about all the verses that apply to that. The Bible does teach that we're to let the peace of God rule in our hearts. Mm-hmm. The Bible reminds us that there is the power of life and death in our tongues.
Yes.
The Bible reminds us that we have to be still and know that He is God. Mm. When our lives are so going and loud, and the TV and the internet and video games, and we never talk and we never look up, and we affect our children in very negative ways. And if you're dealing with a child with mental health issues, with behavioral issues, it is imperative that you start with the family.
Yes.
You can give medication, but if you can repair, if you can change something in a child's life by behavioral modification in your own life and in your own home, mm-hmm. How much more successful will that be than just giving to your child medication?
Right.
So this is where we're going with this. Start here. Do everything possible to focus on methods that have made a difference for centuries. Mm-hmm. Some of the medications are new, and the fallout of them is uncertain. Where will it lead us down the road?
Right.
So use those wisely. Choose methods that have worked. So start with the home and family, and determine to have a strong family, and work to have a peaceful home. And then Bethany and I would also just point out to you that you should work to have a protected home. Mm. And what I mean by that is I'm thinking, the internet, video games, movies, TV. Yes. We do have to protect our home in this generation, and it is never ending. Mm-hmm. Isn't it crazy? Never ending. So start with the internet. The internet has caused a huge mental health crisis. It actually shocked our world at how damaging COVID-19 was when our children were not able to leave, and they spent hours at home on the internet. Right. Suicide rates jumped so exponentially, it shocked the entire world. And the struggles our children went through of depression and discouragement and frustration shocked the entire world. Mm-hmm. Back up to the family I grew up in, when school was out, we had a full schedule of work to be done on the farm and events to, games to play around the yard. And we always had our bicycles. And now our generation, when there's time off, when we lock ourselves into an enclosed space, into a world that is just full of everything from bullying to shaming to a constant promotion of negativity.
Right.
And that affects us.
A constant promotion of immorality. And that does affect our children. I was thinking when you were talking about the pandemic and how we were home for 12 weeks straight, or was it 10 weeks straight as a family. and how that actually, we kind of came through that refreshed and flourishing because we just were together and we had a wonderful time, and how that I had to kind of scratch my head as news was coming out about teens and children who were so struggling. But when you know that their home life is not loving, when you know that their home life is not peaceful, when you know that their mom is upset and irritated that her children have to be home with her and she can't go anywhere, and then they escape into social media or movies or video games, no wonder they came out with such a mental health crisis.
Sure. And moms and dads, if you don't know this, if your children are on TikTok, if they're on Instagram, if they're on Facebook, just if they're in any way, shape, or form on the internet, everything is designed to cause them to see negativity, whether it's climate change, gender issues, all the wars, the famine. It is an onslaught of negative emotional experiences, yes. And it will damage your children. And TV has contributed to this as well.
Yes.
So start here, and we'll close today and pick up next week. Consider removing access to social media or greatly limiting its use. Our kids never had it and have all had great friends. Mm-hmm. We found those at church. We found those at Sunday school. We found those in the youth programs. We found those in our own family because we had 5 children.
Right.
And our boys to this day are still buddies. They text each other and call each other. And when they need to talk to somebody, they call their brother.
Yeah.
We call our, they call their sister. We call each other. We talk to each other. We're still very closely related. That will not happen by accident, but is a first step towards overcoming sometimes the need for medication in our generation.
Yes.
Now, if you'll join us next week, we're going to talk about just some personal things you can do first, and we're going to talk about some personal things you can do with your children first, and then we're going to challenge you how to use medicine wisely, and we're going to talk to you about how to do the research before you take the medicine. So one more episode about meds, and hope we're not being offensive to you. We're just trying to give you wisdom to navigate a world like ours in a more wise way. And in a culture where multitudes now are relying on medication to help them to get through what our world is now calling special needs, we do believe there are methods from God's Word and God's truth and from centuries that can help us perhaps to navigate it either without the medicine or with less. So if you have questions, comments, we'd love to hear from you. And we are not offended at all if you have a different view than ours, and we would love to hear about it. So please feel free to reach out to us. We are always available to chat, to read, to think, and to grow ourselves.
Right.
But thanks for joining us today. Any final words before we sign off today?
Well, it just occurred to me that this will be the day after Father's Day that this airs, and so we should probably say Happy Father's Day.
Well, absolutely, and Happy Father's Day to all you dads out there. It is a wonderful thing to be a dad.
Yes, it is.
So enjoy that. Thank you, thank you.
I'm looking at the best one ever.
Come on, tell me some more.
I love you, and I think you're an amazing father.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening to the Keeping It Young podcast. And whatever else you do this week, make sure that you serve the Lord with gladness.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.